Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Živile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Welcome, Paris, so much. It's great to welcome you on Perception Paradox podcast. And it's great to meet you during the South Summit, your playground of entrepreneurship, innovation. And it's my first South Summit in Madrid, which I don't know, you can see from my face.
Enjoy it?
I loved it. I
Great.
enjoyed it. I'm so grateful that I've got a chance to come and to meet a local ecosystem, and not only local, also international. So I'm happy that we're here today to unfold what's going to unfold. And first thing we connected and clicked was AI, right? And your recent talk on the TEDx and the conversation is all about the tech and innovation. So can you brief a bit us and the audience for a kickoff? What's your relationship actually to innovation, technology?
So, did you want to talk about the AI first, or how do you want
How do you want to
to
kick off? We can kick off with AI, actually.
Okay, yeah. And so I've done 3 TEDx talks, and my emphasis has always been about comfort with uncertainty, because people struggle with the idea of, if I tell you get out of your comfort zone, most people struggle with that. I don't think you would, because you've been out of your comfort zone a lot. Mm-hmm. I see your comfort zone like a muscle. It's like the more you stretch it, the bigger it becomes. And so professionally, I'm never out of my comfort zone professionally. Mm-hmm. What does an entrepreneur see outside of their comfort zone? Opportunity. What does an entrepreneur see in uncertainty? Opportunity. And so my first TED Talk was about that, TEDx Talk. And then my second TEDx Talk took it even further and said, imagine if we could measure our comfort with uncertainty. So you have just like you measure your IQ, I can measure your comfort with uncertainty. And if I put you through a difficult situation, you could see that it increased your comfort with uncertainty. And my last TEDx talk a couple of weeks ago essentially takes this even further, because what we're seeing today is that a lot of students are, the talk was cognitive offloading in the age of AI. So a lot of students are outsourcing their thinking to AI. And in a way, it's because, we're doing less critical thinking. And a lot of people, if you're comfortable with uncertainty, you do more critical thinking because you're curious, you look at things differently. When you're in your shell and you're not comfortable with uncertainty, you do less critical thinking. And so we're living in a world today, and there's a lot of research now starting to come out that about 65% of the people that use generative AI on an extended basis have much less critical thinking. Mm-hmm. They have much less confidence. They're suffering from imposter syndrome, all these sorts of things, which are really bad. And so I think that we have to force young people today to do a lot more critical thinking than ever before. And that's where my original work comes beautifully into this picture, because before it was get out of your comfort zone, be more innovative, think out of the box. Now it's, you got to do all that, but on top of that, you've got to not rely so much on AI.
Yeah. How do you yourself, what's your connection with AI, right? For example, you mentioned that now we tend to turn into all the technology, especially when it comes to copywriting, brainstorming, and then business model adjustment, that before we think about potential business model, we do ask what kind of business model would fit my startup in a way. I'm more referring to them, perhaps first-time founders who are just ideating, maybe in the university spin-offs. So when does AI comes into your thought train? Because it can be used as a good tool actually to grow things.
AI is a tremendous tool. I'm not against AI at all. I'm using AI for entrepreneurship. I encourage my students to use AI for entrepreneurship. We use it in M&A, in investment banking. AI is now being used everywhere, and we have to use it. But there is a difference between having AI do it for you and having AI be a tool for you. Yeah. Young people today, and this is where my TEDx talks comes in, about 60% of the class are just giving it to AI. One of the things that's unique about diversity in the classroom is you get different opinions. But now you're having the same opinion because everybody's getting their opinion from AI. There are very few people starting to think. We did a workshop yesterday at South Summit, and the students were saying, everybody's got the same opinion now because they're getting it from the same source. And so, the brain is also like a muscle. Do you work out?
Yeah, I do.
So you know that the more you work out, the better shape your body is. The same thing with your brain. The more you use it, the better it gets. If you don't use your brain to think, it's like when you don't work out, it gets worse. And as you get older, if you don't work out, you lose about 3% of your muscle every year. And so, you have to be using your brain, you have to be exercising your brain. And the only way to do that today is by not using AI for certain times of the day, so you can really exercise it. Now, then you've got another 20 or 30% of the class, which are rock stars. These people are using AI really well. Those are the best students. They're using AI to take them to another level. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about the 60% that are getting worse and worse. And where's this going to stop?
That's pretty sad. What do you think we can do actually to stop this downhill with the usage of technology and to reverse a bit and bring back the critical thinking?
What do you do with people that are like getting fat and lazy? You send them to the gym. We have to send these people to the gym, the mental gym. Mm-hmm. Now, they're not going to go there on their own. So schools and universities need to force students to spend an amount of time really exercising their mind independent of AI. Take, for me, my example, I tell my students they can use AI all day in the classroom. But when I give them an exam, 3 conditions. No phone, no computer, no going to the bathroom. It's a multiple choice, paper and pencil.
Mm-hmm. I thought like exams are being still done that way, no?
No.
Now it's all digital and
digital, and you can use AI, whatever.
Okay.
So yeah, we have to go back to the old days in terms of how you measure critical thinking.
Did you always have a good relationship with uncertainty and being such an entrepreneurial spirit?
No. If you see my first TEDx talk, I tell my personal story. I was a nerd. I hated uncertainty personally, and I hated it professionally. And it was doing my PhD that I was able to realize that our relationship with uncertainty is different personally than professionally. And you can measure it. So just to give you an idea, 80% of the world love uncertainty professionally, but hate it in their personal lives. Mm-hmm. People like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, they're nerds in their personal lives. Professionally, they love uncertainty. And so that's 80% of the world. Then you've got about 10% of the world that they love to go crazy both professionally and personally. Elon Musk is an example of that. And so why is that 80% there? Because most people look for a balance in their lives. I'm a bit of a nerd in my personal life because professionally I go crazy.
What's the craziest thing right now you are focused on?
I'm teaching in Baku. Do you know where Baku is?
Yeah, in Azerbaijan.
Well,
yeah,
most people don't know where Baku is.
Wonderful.
And so the first time I went to Baku, people were like, "You're going to Baku to teach?" I've been going there for 3 years now.
Yeah.
And so if you told me we're going to go tomorrow to Siberia or to sell ice to Eskimos, I'll ask you, when does the train leave?
Oh, I would jump in. I would ask, is there a place for one more? Actually, I'm going to Georgia, Tbilisi, in a couple of weeks for demo day. It's very exciting, I think, because then you meet so many different cultures, different thought patterns.
I'm going to be in Baku on the 19th and 20th of June.
Wonderful. So that's very soon, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I love opportunity, uncertainty. I see opportunity in everything professionally, and so now a lot of my research is about measuring that comfort with uncertainty.
How can you measure that? Because it's also a very broad term, right? Do you set your own some kind of non-negotiables that still would allow you to face the uncertainty in a more grounded way, or what's your?
We ask questions. We have an assessment with 29 questions, and then we give you the score.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, you can measure it by, asking enough questions that tell you whether that person is comfortable with uncertainty professionally or personally. And so, yeah, that's what my TEDx has been about. But the latest one is the one that really I'm interested in, which is, as I said, this cognitive offloading that we're perceiving everywhere.
Yeah. What do you think will be your next focus on the cognitive offloading or next action so we can raise the awareness of the essence of
I'd
critical
like
thinking?
to see if we can find technology to avoid this.
Okay.
Find a way for students to use technology to force them to do critical thinking on their own. That's the next exciting thing, I think.
Okay. And right now we are in IE University. You are, as I told you when I entered it, you're football coach, American football coach basement room. How do you see the education system right now changing and growing the young generation of entrepreneurs, innovators? How it has to adjust into the nowadays agile and super fast changing world?
So, yeah, that's a really good question. Ideas are everywhere now, and ideas are cheap. And with AI, you can validate your ideas, you can do all kinds of stuff. And so, really, this is about execution. And, I don't know, Sam Altman from OpenAI came here about 2 years ago, and he kept saying that in the future, we're going to see unicorns of one person running a unicorn. That's amazing. And we're already going to see some of that probably next year. And so entrepreneurship is going to become very, very big, much bigger, but you'll need less people to get the job done. And so really, the only one that's not replaceable is the entrepreneur. But the workers, a lot of them are going to be replaced.
Mm-hmm. Unless they upgrade the skills, critical thinking.
Yeah, unless they really, find ways to create value for themselves. But the people that are like offloading everything today to AI, they're totally going to be replaced.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. And what brought you to entrepreneurship? Because you've been having quite an interesting career so far. No, you were working with the funds and then moving around, and you're coming to Madrid. Could you give us a brief story how did change happen in your life, maybe in major elements?
So I studied computer science because I told you I was a nerd. I liked, black or white. So I studied computer science, got my bachelor's and my master's work in computer science. Then I worked for a year in it, and I realized that I didn't enjoy it, the work. I enjoyed the studying, but I didn't enjoy the work. And so my boss of my department, the IBM PC had just come out. This is 1981. And he said to me, I'm going to leave the company and start my own startup. And I was like, a startup? What is that? Well, a few people are going to get together and come up with a new idea. And so he asked me, can you go to New York? I was in Boston, and actually help me raise money for this. I went to New York, I talked about his idea. I raised $1 million, came back. He left the company. He took all of us with him. And then the investor, which was a VC, offered me a job. They said, you're good at raising money. And I thought, wow, raising money. And so I moved to New York, worked with this VC for 6 months, and then I got hired away from the VC by UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland, and I worked there for 10 years, all throughout the 80s in New York and then the 90s in London. And so I spent 21 years in investment banking, loved uncertainty professionally, hated it still in my personal life, but I loved it professionally. And then at the age of 42, I got lucky and I saw an opportunity to become an entrepreneur. I created a sports marketing company. I moved to Spain from London, and I spent 8 years with 5 startups. 2 failed miserably, 3 did okay, 1 did very well. And then I decided I'd had enough. So, I always say there are 2 types of people in this world, Friday people and Monday people. Friday people hate what they do all week, and Monday people love what they do. And so I had become a Friday person after 8 years of entrepreneurship, and I said, got to do something different. So I got my PhD, and I became a professor. And I've been here now for 15 years, running the Entrepreneurship Center here at IE. And, it's like I said to you earlier this week, every time I change careers, I make less money. But I really enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm a Monday person.
Wonderful.
You're a Monday person too, right?
Yes, I am.
You love what you do. I mean, look at you. You could be like hanging out with your friends here in Madrid, and you're doing a podcast.
Learning, meeting people, growing as a performer. I don't know, if someone would tell me now for 8 years old me that I'm gonna actually be brave enough to pursue my childhood dream, I would be like, no, because where I'm coming from, such kind of career choice was considered not to be a profession, like not a serious profession. You know, you have to be something more into the frames, and I've never felt that I could fit in. And
I
then
can
it's just
imagine.
like I think, and then you find what you really truly want to go all in. Either it's a problem you want to solve or the area where you can want to contribute and create value. Then the fear, it's not existing anymore. The will and the wish is way more stronger than the fear of failure.
I
You
can
just
imagine.
go.
Yeah.
How is talking about your 5 startups, right? What is your relationship with failure? Because you mentioned not all of them did really well, and if you're going into that field, we usually are afraid because it can be different stakeholders involved, employees involved, disappointment. Every day it's like one day is woohoo, another day, hey, we're going down.
Yeah, well, for me, failure has always been something that when I was a nerd, you take failure personally, you know. When you have a small comfort zone, you're, you're not comfortable with uncertainty. And the uncertainty of, I was a computer programmer. Things either worked or they didn't work. And if they didn't work, I knew I could always fix them. So when you're dealing with human emotions and the startup world, failure, like failing in a relationship or failing in a startup, you can't control that. That's why you have a lot of people today that they hold on to failed relationships. They hang on. They don't want to give up on a relationship because they fear the uncertainty of not being in that relationship. I'm talking at a personal level. And the same goes with startups. You're working on a startup and you're thinking, oh my God, what if I fail? And so when I was a nerd, I hated the idea of failure at a personal level and a professional level. And then as I became much more entrepreneurial professionally, I saw failure as learning, and I never took it personally. I'm still a nerd in my personal life, so I would still see failure in my personal life as failure, not learning. But that's wrong as well. I think even in your personal life, you learn from relationships.
Yeah.
The trouble is with, in your professional life, you can go through many, many failures and get up and keep going. In your personal life, many times you lose part of you, part of yourself in a relationship. And so, and I felt this when I was, a lot younger, that a lot of people, they've had so many failed relationships that they put up like a brick wall. And then, they try to start a new relationship and it's like you are guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
Going into trying to have a relationship with that person because they have failed so many times that, they lose trust, they lose hope, they lose all these things. And I think that also is a stigma that a lot of people have professionally thinking, oh my God, if I fail in one startup and I fail in 2 startups, I'm going to be a loser. And no, in the professional world, you actually learn from these things. Now, in your personal life, it's harder to accept that as a learning experience because, in your professional life, you can take people's advice. But in your personal life, how often do you take people's advice? I remember when I was a kid or when I was younger, people would say, oh, no, don't even go near that person. That's bad news. And you would not listen because, you have to learn by yourself.
Yeah.
Now, in professional life, people, take more advice. And that's where entrepreneurship education is great because it actually teaches you frameworks and way of looking at things so that you don't make those mistakes. There's a book by this guy, Uri Levine, that says, don't fall in love with the solution.
Fall in love with the problem.
Right. Well, in your personal life, you fall in love with the solution, usually.
Yeah. It's so interesting. That's literally one of the conversations I had yesterday that involved both comparative and personal and professional and how we do it a bit different way. Oh, thank you for sharing. And talking about your startup still founder's journey, since we're in entrepreneurial week, I would like to pick up your brains, and I do believe founders were listening for us as well. How long did it take you to find problems to solve for your startups? What is your approach actually to identifying the problem area and going all in into that? And
my startup ideas always, either a situation was presented in front of me and I saw an opportunity, or I saw a pain point. But in most cases, and I always tell this to students, if someone offers you an opportunity, take it. No matter what you think, whether you can do it or not, you can learn along the way. And those are not my words. Richard Branson said that. If an opportunity appears, and so my startups were opportunities that someone called me up. The first startup, I was in the bank, and someone called me up from Sony Japan and said, we got a problem. Manchester United has canceled their friendly match in Japan. Can you find us an entrepreneur to come and organize a European football team to come to Japan? And I didn't know anything about sports. And there I was thinking, wow, guy's calling me as his banker. Is this my opportunity? I didn't sleep all night, and I thought to myself, this is it. I resigned from the bank, and I said, I'm going to become a sports marketing professional. It just appeared there. I don't believe in coincidences in life, and I think so. When life gives you an opportunity, or you feel you're having luck in something, you got to take it. And so I would say that of my 5 startups, 2 happened that way, opportunities. The other one was this student, comes to me, and he had a great job at a company, and he comes to me and says, there's a need for this in this market. I'm going to do this. Will you, back me up? Another opportunity. Wow. And then some of the other ones were situations where I saw gaps in the market, pain points, and I said, if I don't do it, somebody else will. And so I don't see this as, a mathematical process that you do and an idea comes out at the end. This is about keeping your eyes open for gaps in the market, being smart about things, and taking advantage of opportunities.
What would be the core characteristics of an entrepreneur that would...
Never gives up. See, that's a difference also between an entrepreneur. You have to have persistence as an entrepreneur, perseverance. But you have to have perseverance while you see that, you're trying to find product market fit with your idea, but at some point you need to realize when this is not working. If you're going to fail in entrepreneurship, you need to fail fast. Mm-hmm. Now, I always tell this to my students also in relationships because, I'm very close to a lot of my students, and they come and they tell me their personal stuff sometimes. And the amount of people that hold on to relationships forever, and they don't realize that at some point you need to say, it's over. It's not working. And so the same thing comes with entrepreneurship. You need to realize quickly when you need to just give up on something.
When do you call it quit?
Yes. And the same thing goes with relationships. People many times fall in love with solutions, with people, and they don't realize that this is not working. And they have to, so, if you're going to fail, you got to fail fast. And so I think you need perseverance to get through the maybe 1, 2, or 3 years of your startup. But when you realize that it's just not working, you can't spend 10 years beating your head against the wall trying to make this thing work. Yeah. Because life goes by very, very fast. And this also, in relationships. Young people today, all of a sudden they're 40 and they're like, my life went by. And what did I do with it? Statistically in business, if you haven't made your first $1 million by 35, you never will.
I still have a few years. All right.
So between 30 and 35 are the years to make it big.
Good.
Now, usually in your personal life, those are very important.
Yes. Who did you choose?
Because after 35, things get scarier. So I had a student of mine, she came to me and she said, Professor, I've got I've got this opportunity to go to Frankfurt and work there at Amazon for a couple of years. Not really excited about the job, but, I think I'll take it and see what happens. And I asked her, how old are you? She said, I'm 32. I said, well, you think you're going to go there for a couple of years, but 5 years will go by like that. And then you're going to be 37. And then you're going to start getting worried.
Mm-hmm.
So don't live your life thinking, oh yeah, I got time. Thinking, if today were the last day of my life, would I do what I'm going to do today? Would you do today what you're doing right now if it was your last day?
Yes.
Good. I would do it too.
That's so great. We're aligned. Yes, I think I would. And I kept asking myself, because it's not easy to throw away or like to step away from very certain and comfortable life in a way, even though I was traveling and working in very exciting roles, and had the opportunity also to raise money, to build a startup at a completely wrong problem area. And it took courage and it took balls to actually admit and to eliminate my ego and external pressure, to actually step back and to recalibrate myself. So where is the focus? Where do I really thrive?
Yeah.
And so I don't have to wait for Friday to come, So yeah, totally. Entrepreneurs have big visions. We also just explored that your entrepreneurial hall, the wall of wishes, the wall of names, and big visions. And when your vision is so big, it's so difficult to start and to break it through. How did you learn to actually, how did you learn, and how can we break our vision into smaller steps to start?
Our vision of an idea, or a vision of what?
A vision of, I guess, revolutionary idea, right? Because usually like we had this vision, but it's so far away, and it will change also in a way how we're gonna get there, right? And many people even don't start because it's too big in their mind.
Oh, okay. Well, you need to, it's not easy to focus, but, a lot of people ask me, what is the difference between an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley and an entrepreneur in Europe? An entrepreneur in Silicon Valley says, I'm good at one thing, and I'm going to become the best at that. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurs in Europe usually say, I'm good at this, this, and this. Mm. So I think you need to be totally focused on solving one problem. And then you can solve other problems around you. But your vision has to become simple. You got to go for that vision, for that problem that you're solving, get some real metrics, get real results, get product market fit on that, and then you can expand to other areas.
Very wise and simple.
It's like
Focus
Uber.
is the key.
Uber, they went after a very simple problem. People, you're going to have disruption in the market when you've got two things. People not happy with the current service, and people thinking they're paying too much. People were not happy with taxis in the US, and they were paying too much. And so Uber said, we're going to solve that problem. Later, when they became very big, they got into Uber Eats and Uber that, Uber what. So they started doing other things. If they had said from day one, we're going to, have drivers for you, we're going to deliver your food, and we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, you just need to stay focused at the beginning.
Mm. What's your approach on building teams for startups? Hire fast, fire fast, or
commitment? You need commitment. I look for people that are committed because they can learn along the way. And there's a big difference between being committed and being involved. And the best way I like to portray it is when you're having scrambled eggs with bacon in the morning. The chicken is involved. The pig is fully committed.
That's a great alternative.
Skin in the game.
Yeah. Okay.
You want pigs on your team.
Fair enough.
I had a team meeting this morning, and we have 5, 6 people on the call. 5 of them I know are totally committed. I call them at 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock, whatever. They're ready to work. We had a new person arrive. He was the only man. Women are usually more committed than men. And he was the only man on the team, and I said to him, let's see if you're committed, because everybody else on this call is very committed. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my startup teams, I'm not very politically correct, because I usually have a lot more women on those teams than men.
Okay.
Women have more emotional intelligence usually than men, and they are more committed when they are committed.
But then what's your point of view or take on the current landscape or the investment allocation between female founders and male founders and all this buzz we're having right now of how much capital goes to the male founders and how little for female founders, and then all the new funds approaching focus just on the female founders, etc. Is it something with the traditional investment businesses still that we kind of don't let go, and some stigmas, or it's just that male are more willing to take risks?
That's what I was going to say. Male, male take more risk. Like I said, my startups are mainly women because they work harder, they're smart, they have more emotional intelligence, but they take less risk. So the leaders of those teams or those companies usually are men because they take more risk. But the actual workers in the teams are not men as much. The reality is that there are a lot of women. I mean, the United States is the country where there are more women in leadership roles, but it's still 34% of the population. So 34% of leadership positions are held by women. Mm-hmm. In Saudi Arabia, it's 2%. Wow. And in Europe, it's probably 20%. A lot of people think the limit is 34% because the majority of women don't want to be in those roles. They either want to prefer to have a family life, or at some point they just say, I don't want to die working. I don't want to live just to work. They have other priorities sometimes. Mm-hmm. And women invest differently than men. Women think differently than men. And so while a man might work till he's 88, like Warren Buffett, and he'd be a billionaire and still take the bus, will a woman do that? Will a woman work till she's 88 and be frugal and not spend money even though she's a billionaire? I think women know how to enjoy life a little more than those stereotype men that are like slaves to their work. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure all of this is discrimination. I'm sure there's an element of that. Yeah. Because some people might think, she's going to work for a few years, then she's going to get married, have kids, and then she'll be gone or whatever. I'm sure there's an element of stereotyping and discrimination, but I think the bigger element is just nature and that, women are different. They think differently. I mean, just imagine if it was men that had children instead of women. The world would have a population problem. How many men would actually go through the 9 months of having a baby? I wouldn't. I couldn't deal with that experience or the pain. I mean, men don't have the emotional intelligence to go through that process, or maybe even the strength to go through the giving birth. I would outsource that if I could.
That was such a male entrepreneur. I would outsource.
But that's what they would do. That's what they would do.
That's wild.
Men don't have the strength to do that.
Yeah. That is crazy. That's a great. We're having a great entrepreneurial founder ABC. But before we kind of, I think we could move to the final part of this conversation, since still that's the time that we could continue 5 hours, but the time is limited in a way. Community, right? Community. You mentioned that it's been your 14th South Summit. You're part of it from the beginning. I would like to hear your thoughts. Maybe first, what value do you see of such communities, of South Summits gathering together entrepreneurial minds from local ecosystems, from outside Spain region, for founders and stakeholders when they...
Well, for me, the most important thing is the impact this has on young people. Mm-hmm. The founders, the stakeholders, that all happens once you have good startups, investors show up, all these stakeholders appear. But we're living in a country, when I arrived here, they had done a survey and 52% of young people wanted to work in the government.
52%? Wow,
of young people wanted to work in the government. There was no ambition.
Uh-huh. So government is like very kind of straightforward path and...
It gives you a safety net.
Okay, that's it.
In Europe, in the United States, people live to work. Here they work to live.
Yes.
But not all of Europe is the same, you know? And so ambition is something that traditionally in many European countries, and also including Spain, was a bad word. If someone said to you, you're ambitious, they were like, ooh, what? It almost means you're willing to do anything for money. And so in this country, in Spain, ambition has always been a bad word. Now people are starting to change. But they did a survey last year, and it wasn't 52% of young people that wanted to be government workers. It was 50%. Still, it's too much.
It's a lot.
It's too much. So what the South Summit does and all these types of events is that it shows the world that there's more than just job security, that you know, you don't have to hate what you do, be a Friday person, to survive in life. You can actually love what you do, and then it doesn't feel like work. And so, you know, Europe still has to go a long way. The US is the other extreme. This is the other extreme.
Yep.
We need to find a happy medium. I love my situation because I love what I do, but you know, I'm not your average professor. I work 14 hours a day.
Paris, have you ever been a Friday person?
Never. But when I became one, I quit and I did something else.
Okay.
But my work ethic is so extreme, you know, from 8 years in New York and, you know, that I never disconnect. Do you see my sign up?
Good morning. Let the stress begin. Your cortisol level must be high from the early morning.
I think a little amount of stress is good.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're not alive. I need to be doing stuff all the time. I actually relax more on the beach when I've spent 2 hours before going to the beach working.
Okay. So your mind is constantly
My
on
mind
the go.
is
It's like a...
that's why I'm so obsessed with this new TEDx talk of mine of cognitive offloading, because my mind has to always be working. And if it's, you know, taking 4 hours off sailing or surfing or whatever, I need to be able to come back to it. And I'm just worried that we're creating a bunch of young kids today that have like outsourced their mind.
Did I get it right that right now you're on a mission actually to create awareness and bring back the critical thinking for the youth in the world?
Watch my TEDx talk. You did.
Yeah, I did watch it. Yes,
I need everybody to watch it and realize that we need to have a sense of urgency right now.
Oh, that's a very big mission, and I'm pretty sure you will definitely find the ways to reach large audience, and that TEDx was a great start, and I hope that people who are listening as well.
Yes, all of you out there. You know, I hope we've shared a lot of ideas that make you Monday people.
Yeah, I really hope so. And if not, then I don't know, send us an email, a message, and then, I don't know, we'll bring out some tools to actually help transition to that, because I think also one misconception we have when it comes to transition towards from Friday person to a Monday person, that everyone thinks that you have to quit everything and it has to happen overnight, which does not. You can break it through the steps, right? You can, and then you have to test things to find your, actually perhaps that thing that, like you were just talking about the cognitive offloading, and then your mission you're on, your eyes just lights up. Before we close, I really have to ask you one more question.
Sure.
Paris, you just mentioned how you're passionate and you're present and fully hands-on on the things you've been doing. You've been trained by American entrepreneurial strong culture and also venture capital, and then you came to Europe and still do for 14 hours a day. Currently, we are talking a lot about work-life balance and how should we build companies, should we really aim for such a fast growth, and all of this conversation, right? What's your take on this harmony when it comes to work?
Work-life balance?
Mm-hmm. Work-life balance, harmony, and how do you see it? How does it look like for you?
I think there's a big problem in the world today that many people are searching for meaning in their lives. And for some people, meaning is material, money, success. You need to come to terms with your why. And I don't want to copy Simon Sinek's expression but what is your why? When you get up in the morning, what gives you that drive? what gives you meaning? And it can't always be money, and it can't always be, whatever. For some people, it's religions. For some people, it's their family. For some people, it's, I am a religious person. So for me, the most important pillar of meaning is God. But apart from that, for me, it's, intellectual challenges and success. And so for me, that's why I always have to keep my mind thinking. And it's the thrill of the chase, because reality usually is always less than your expectations. When you're dreaming of something, your dreams are, when I was a kid, I used to I had this fantasy about this big, because for Christmas, I would go to this shop, they would take me to the shop, and I would buy a present there, and I would idealize that shop. I thought it was like a castle. As I got older, I was looking at that shop like, why was I so crazy about this shop? So what I'm trying to say is that many times, and I'm sure this has happened to you, that you idealize something, either a person or a building or something, and then when you have that situation, you're like, why was I so crazy about this? Mm-hmm. And so usually reality is less than our anticipation or, of something. And so for me, the thrill of the chase, the expectation, is even better than achieving it usually. And I always need to be chasing that dream, and that's what keeps me going and gives me meaning.
How can people find their why? Especially nowadays, it's so busy and noisy that we forget to really tune in who we are and what society wants us to be.
Yeah. Well, forget about society, because the reality is that most of the world is not happy. So society doesn't know the answer to make you happy. And the other thing you got to realize is that the world is not fair. That's like lesson number one. The world is not fair. I think you need to surround yourself with positive people, and you're going to find your why when you end up doing things that you enjoy. When they don't feel like work, like look at you. Here like I said, you could be out there, you're filming, you're spending over an hour here
with Paris and
on a podcast.
Here as well,
This is your why. It's a beautiful why.
And I'm so grateful that you're here with us with Perception Paradox, just literally in the buzz of South Summit, because South Summit is not over. So I guess we can wrap it up. And I have this closing tradition on the podcast that I like to leave the audience with a thought to ponder after they listen for the episode. It can be anything, but usually what I like to guide through it, something potentially for someone who is building, creating, and you know how it is when you build, create, and there are different days, or we are afraid to make a change or to commit. Is it relationship, work? What would be just, on the spot thought to ponder for some inspiration or, very long rambling, final thoughts for people to leave the episode with some ideas.
Well, I think the most important thing I'd like to let you ponder on is that we don't have an expiration date on our forehead. And so we really need to live every day as if it was our last. We really need to. And you need to live with no regrets. My father told me, my father was 83 when he died, and he said to me something that I carry with me every day, which is, when you get very, very old, you're about to die, you're never going to regret the things you've done. Never going to regret, because you always say, well, yeah, it was terrible, but I learned. You're never going to regret what you've done, but you will really regret what you haven't done. And so be careful about, leading a life where you don't actually do the things that you think you should do, because the worst thing that can happen to you is to have regrets of not doing something.
Paris, I could not imagine a better way to close this special episode. Ladies and gentlemen, so I guess final thought, live life with no regrets. Exactly. And if you're currently a bit having some regrets, it's not too late to change that. So we directly recorded at IE University. I will leave all the links in the comments, and also if someone maybe would like to connect with you. And thank you very much. Have a great day wherever you are.
Thank you, everybody.